All right, everyone, we are going to get started. We are so happy to have you here today. I am Jacqueline Jackson, the Senior Marketing Manager for the Center. Again, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am going to tell you about all the different logistics, things going on. That way our speakers can focus on getting the information and don't have to focus on that part. So I'll handle a couple of things with you.
Slight delay with it.
Okay. Let's see if the Wi-Fi is going here. Here we go. That's what I want. All right. So we have a lot of new faces tonight. A couple of center clients, also a couple of Cynthia's clients, and we are so excited to have you here. I just wanted to give you a short overview of the center, just in case you are new to us. We are a privately held wealth management company. We started in 1985. So if you do the math, we're about 40 years in. And here are all our stats. We have many certified financial planners, a stacked team. We serve people across the country, and we manage $1.6 billion in assets. However, the most important thing to us is right here, our mission, which I reiterated here, striving to improve lives through financial planning done right. That is really important to us, whether we had one client or, well, obviously we're all here. We need to say employees. We want more than one client, but if we just had one, it's really important for us to improve lives and to do it the right way. So that is what I really want to punctuate about our firm, even though we have some really cool stats to share as well. All right, so in terms of announcements, you all may not have noticed, but right outside the double doors to the left, there are restrooms, so feel free, gently get up and make your way there if you need to. Obviously, we have food, we have plenty of it. Take as much as you need. And one quick, really important thing, because we had a minor mistake in the past where the doors downstairs do lock. Now, we tried to wedge the door, but you know, there is a maintenance staff here, so they might remove the wedge. If you go outside, I would kindly ask that you let a center person know, just in case you get locked out. We can kind of say like, oh, this person, you know, they were going downstairs and it's 5 minutes later, to make sure we can open the door for you. So that is one thing, we don't want any of those issues. So I want to make you aware of it. Another thing I do want to make you aware of, we are recording this session. The good news for you is that if you miss a beat, don't worry. We're going to send the recording out to you. There are a couple of folks that couldn't make it tonight, so we want to make sure we share that information with them also. Please keep that in mind. We will have a Q&A session. If you have a very personal question, we have some experts here for you to help you out, and be mindful of that when we get to the Q&A section. The other thing I want to let you know is that we do have a survey. Getting your feedback is really important to us. Again, we focus on financial planning done right. So when we're giving you information, we want to make sure it's the information that you need. And if there's something we can do to make the presentation better, we certainly want to do that. Now, that being said, we understand that you probably want feedback from us. So as I mentioned before, there is a Q&A section at the end of this presentation. You'll notice at the back of your packet, there's a 3x5 card. You can write your questions down during the presentation. Jeanette, if you wouldn't mind waving your hand in the back here, Jeanette in the back will be collecting the cards, and we will have your questions. So we will answer that towards the end of our session together. Another important thing, you have some awesome handouts. We also have some bonuses for you. As I mentioned before, there is a recording that has to go through our compliance department. So it'll probably take about a week for it to go through, but we will be sending a follow-up email with that information, as well as a bonus Social Security handout for you as well. All right. Any questions before I move on? Okay. All right, I would like to introduce our speakers today. Really excited to introduce these two very talented people. We have Josh Bitel and Nick Defenthaler presenting today. They are certified financial planners. Again, we want to bring you the best of the best. And the reason we identified Nick and Josh as great speakers because they specialize in some areas that we think are going to be most helpful to you today. So the first focus area, they are retirement planning specialists. They also are experts in tax efficiency strategizing. And importantly, while you're here tonight, they specialize in Social Security knowledge, so in Social Security planning. So we have identified them as the absolute best speakers to talk to you tonight. And I think by the end of the night, you'll be convinced too. They're the best of the best. One other very important person, you notice that.
I didn't get a photo.
You didn't know I was putting that photo
That's
in
a
there.
little old, so I probably look a little older now, but it's like the driver's license saying you never update, right?
But we have a wonderful relationship with Cynthia. She is our esteemed collaborator. For center clients, this is probably not the first time you've seen Cynthia's face. Every year, Cynthia is generous enough to do a Medicare and pre-retirement healthcare seminar for our clients. A bonus of being a client at the center is that we have wonderful relationships with very knowledgeable people. Cynthia is one of those wonderful relationships we have, and we are so proud to collaborate with her. And in fact, for this event, she's brought a couple of clients with her. Now that being said, again, we really appreciate her. So Cynthia, I want to present you with a small token of our appreciation.
Oh my goodness.
Free Medicare plan for a year.
Oh, thank you very much.
So thank you for working with us.
Nice.
We appreciate you. I know it's a little heavy. There's good stuff in there. But that, even though I just handed something off to you, if you wouldn't mind placing that down and sharing a couple of words with the audience, please.
Absolutely. So, but you can take my picture down now.
We'll go back to this fun center stuff.
So we were just talking the night before the seminar, and I've actually been partnering with the center for about 7 years now. So it seems like just a minute, but it's actually been 7 years. And, been able to work with their clients, helping them make that transition into their Medicare coverages, upon retirement. We also do under 65, coverage as well. Some people are lucky enough to be able to retire before 65. But when I'm meeting with clients, I get a lot of questions on Social Security, and I always tell them I know enough to be dangerous, and it's really something that you want to talk to somebody who's well steeped in Social Security and make sure that you make the best decision for yourself as far as timing and the different strategies. And what I found over the last 7 years is when I have like financial planning type questions or Social Security, and I reach out to the folks here at the center, that they're always very responsive, very thorough in their explanation. In fact, their explanation just cements in my mind that yes, I do not want to be trying to talk about Social Security. So they're a very great resource, very knowledgeable, very helpful and friendly. So I'm really pleased that they opened this up to some of my clients to attend tonight, and I'm sure there will be a Q&A, but if you don't want to ask questions in this setting, I'm sure they'd be happy for you to reach out to them, one-on-one, phone call, email, something like that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, of course, to work with you guys. They're a great firm, and thank you for doing this tonight. I'm excited to learn some things about Social Security.
Well, we appreciate it. I always tell everyone that I run into that you're, one of the best professionals that I've ever engaged with. Responsive, just knows her stuff. You go to Cynthia and you're going to be well taken care of. So we appreciate you. So thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
As would I. Thank you guys.
Yeah, 100%. So as Jacqueline mentioned, we do have quite a few guests today. A lot of folks, center clients. I see some faces and recognize some names, folks who've been clients for many, many years. So thank you. But as Jacqueline mentioned, we do have a lot of guests. So one aspect about our team that we're very proud of is our team. So you're seeing all 30 team members up there on the screen, many of which are here tonight. One thing that I think is pretty unique, all of these folks who are lead financial planners for clients have the certified financial planner designation. Pretty unique in this world. And as Jackie mentioned, one of our mission is improving lives through financial planning done right. So how do we do that exactly? What makes us a little bit different? One of our partners who is retiring in June, Matt Chope, always has told me, you know what, Nick, generally people don't pop out of bed like a piece of toast coming out of a toaster, looking to find a financial planner. Usually it's something going on in your life that prompts you to reach out, right? So it could be a retirement, a death of a spouse, an inheritance, a divorce, who knows? But generally speaking, there's something that you're going through that prompts people to reach out. And that's what we're here for, obviously. Our financial planning done right motto, we have a proven process that we take clients through. Annual meetings, looking at your tax return, providing health insurance consultation. I mean, the list goes on. So if you do have an advisor right now and they're not giving some of that input, I would encourage you to ask why. Because more than likely you should be having those conversations because they have a huge impact on your overall financial well-being, other than just the investments that they're managing for you. And as you can see, there's a lot of different faces, different ages, different generations in the room tonight. Not only for clients, but for owners and our staff. I'm actually became a partner in 2020. I'm part of the third generation of ownership, and we actually have 3 quotes from our 3 founding partners on the wall right here. That's actually why this conference room is called Founder. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes just to understand our firm and what we're about, because like I said, we do have a lot of guests this evening. You guys came here to learn more about Social Security and what I like to talk about, which is planning to keep your Medicare premiums as low as humanly possible. But I can't start the presentation without at least one, I promise, very short, quick, funny video, something that I think we've all experienced in life, a home renovation fail, okay?
Only if you get a big dog.
Right. That could create some issues. These are all real, believe it or not. Bathroom vanity. Probably couldn't pass code. That one's my personal favorite. The pontoon is the deck. Point being is sometimes you try to do some of this stuff on your own and it can create some issues, right? So a lot of the folks that we have the pleasure of serving have done it on their own for a long time. They've done a heck of a job, but they reach a point in their life where they just don't want to do it anymore. They don't want to step on any unintended landmines. So once again, really do appreciate everyone giving your time tonight to come out. With that, I'm going to hand it over to really get into the meat of what you all are here for tonight. So my colleague Josh has done over 50 presentations on Social Security. He's a resident expert in this space. He's going to talk to you for the next 15, 20 minutes on that topic. So I'll let Josh take it away.
Hi. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, everybody, for being here. As Nick said, I'm going to really cover the Social Security section today. Typically, when I give this presentation, I call it the 5 things that I think you should know about Social Security before filing. So we'll kind of keep that same theme. And then after that, I'll pass it back to Nick, and he's going to talk to you guys about Medicare income planning and this great acronym IRMAA. So before I dive into the meat and potatoes of the things that I think you should know, I think we should provide a foundation here and talk about some quick facts about Social Security. So just for context, the average retired worker takes home just over $1,500 a month from Social Security. So that's a pretty big chunk for folks who are in retirement. The most popular age for filing is age 62, which also happens to be the earliest that you can file. We'll talk a little bit later about why that might be a good decision, but in my opinion, it's normally the consequence of not really understanding, the decisions that you need to make. You'll see here 52% of Americans file before, I wrote FRA, that's full retirement age, and I'm going to dive into what that means in a moment, but 52% of Americans file before they are eligible for 100% of their benefit, okay? I've spoken to some of you in the room about this just tonight. There's a cost of living adjustment on your Social Security, which is nice. It helps you keep up with inflation, as much as possible. The average over the last 30 years is about 2.3%. We just got a recent bump of 3.2. So that's, important context. Social Security is a big deal because it's, the one area that really keeps up with inflation. 1 in 4 married couples and half of single folks, they rely on Social Security for 90% or more of their income in retirement. That was a baffling stat to me. As a matter of fact, the Social Security Administration actually says that you shouldn't rely on Social Security for more than 40% of your retirement benefit, or of your retirement paycheck, I should say. So, bottom line is a lot of people are relying on Social Security pretty heavily. One fun fact I also like to give is when Social Security was introduced in 1935, the life expectancy for an American was 63 years old. And you couldn't even file for Social Security until 65. So they clearly weren't expecting people to file for very long. Folks weren't living, pretty far beyond, the age of filing Social Security. So the system has changed quite a bit over time, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. So without further ado, let's get into those 5 things that I think are really important. Perhaps the most important thing, or maybe the second most important acronym today, Nick's got a pretty important one later too, is FRA, full retirement age. This is the age in which you, as a Social Security filer, are eligible for 100% of the benefits shown on your Social Security statement. Okay, now that age is different for everybody in the room, depending on when you were born. If you happen to have been born between 1943 and 1954, your FRA, or full retirement age, is age 66. Anybody 1960 and later, your full retirement age is 67. If you're somewhere in between, your full retirement age also falls somewhere in between. So I just want, I'm going to refer back to FRA quite a bit today. So just keep in mind your full retirement age, and that way you can sort of relate back to what I'm saying. So you say, Josh, I know my full retirement age, but what does that mean? What does that matter? I think this graphic does a pretty good job of explaining that. In this instance, let's pretend that somebody's full retirement age is age 66. They are eligible for 100% of the benefits shown on their statement. Now, I mentioned earlier, 50% of folks file before their full retirement age. There are consequences for that. Most people file at age 62. You'll see here, reduced benefits before FRA. If somebody whose full retirement age is 66, if they want to file as soon as possible, I hear it all the time. I want to get into the government's pocket. It's my money. I want to file as soon as possible. I hear that all the time. If you do that, you're actually only locking in 75% of what the benefit is on the statement. Now, that decision is irrevocable. I'm going to put an asterisk next to that statement. It's an irrevocable decision. It's a permanent decision. Once you choose to file, you're locked into that lower benefit. Okay, I put an asterisk because technically you have 12 months to what the Social Security Administration says is correct your mistake. You have 12 months to go back and say, hey, wait a minute, I didn't want to file yet. You can do that within 12 months. However, you have to pay back everything that you collected on. And then once you do decide to file again, you'll get your normal benefit at that time. So I would say consider the decision irrevocable, or else you're going to have to deal with some pretty funky calculations. Now, you'll notice the benefit is steeper with each year earlier that you file. If you decide to file 1 year early, it's not that big of a haircut. You're going to get about 93% of your benefit. So not too bad. Now, conversely, if you are lucky enough that you get to wait, or you are able to wait, or you have the right advice that says maybe I should wait, you can get a nice increase in your benefit. You can wait as long as age 70, and in this case, you will get 132% of your full retirement age benefit. With every year that you defer, that's a guaranteed 8% growth on your Social Security benefit. Now, guaranteed 8% growth per year, every year. I don't think there's any other area in the financial world that we can guarantee you that. So if you're somebody who is able to wait, it may pay to wait. There's a lot of things that we need to consider here before we make that decision, because it's very easy to say, okay, well, good, I'll wait as long as I can. I'll get the largest benefit possible. Easy. Well, there's a lot of things that go into it. I listed a couple of considerations here that, we work with folks all the time, and I see this stuff glossed over, way too much. And I think there's a lot to learn about Social Security. So before you can decide when to file, I would consider a few things. I love to tell people when they ask me, when should I file Social Security? I love to say, well, tell me exactly how long you're going to live, and I'll tell you exactly when to file Social Security. Because you can look at it as a straight math problem, right? There's a break even. So that means basically If you decide to file at Social Security, or I'm sorry, decide to file at full retirement age versus age 62, how long do I have to live beyond my full retirement age for me to be in the green? My lifetime benefits are more now than if I would have filed at 62. That break even is about 11 years. Now, the difference between filing at age 70 versus 67, if that's your full retirement age, that's about 13 years. So if we're going to make a pure math equation out of it, if you expect to live into your mid to late 80s, math would suggest that it's always better to wait to file Social Security. Your total lifetime benefits would be higher. That's a Social Security maximization strategy. Of course, life expectancy is nothing's guaranteed. We can all be healthy, we can have longevity in our family, but we don't want to base all of our decisions based on averages or what we may think. So there's more that goes into it, right? Another consideration is if you have other income sources. Of course, pensions nowadays are much more rare. But if you're somebody who happens to have a pension or a large, I shouldn't even say large, but other assets like 401ks, IRAs, regular brokerage, trading accounts, even bank accounts that are considerable that you can tap into and not have to file Social Security yet, that's a consideration. And conversely, if you have no other area to draw from, but you need money, well, you don't really have many options, and Social Security is what you're going to be taking at that time. I'll talk more about these other ones in a moment, but if you're a high earning spouse, or I'll put it this way, if you are a couple and one of you is a high earner, the other one not so much, there's a lot of strategies involved that could lead you to a decision of filing earlier or later. I'll touch on that in a moment. If you're still working, you may not want to file yet either. I'll get into that in a moment as well. An interesting one is asset preservation. And I think about a client that I have. He said, Josh, I have this pot of money that I'm never going to spend because I don't really spend a ton of money. And I have a pension and I have Social Security. So this pot of money that I'm never going to spend, I want to grow it as much as I can because I want to give as much as I can to my kids. Very lucky kids. But knowing that, the most important thing to him is growing his pot of money, his 401ks, his trading accounts, let's say. Knowing that he doesn't want to tap into that, we actually came to the decision, and of course we went through different strategies that made the most sense to him, but we came to the decision to file Social Security earlier because no matter how great his Social Security benefit gets, he's not passing that on to his kids. But if he could take Social Security earlier and not tap into his account, that made a lot of sense for him. So for asset preservation, that led us to say, maybe you should file a little bit earlier. So there's quite a bit to consider, which is why we always suggest you should definitely partner with a professional before you make this irrevocable decision. I'm not going to talk too much about taxes because I think that we'll all start falling asleep. But the bottom line is your Social Security benefit is most likely taxed. And here's how. Because our tax code likes to be complicated, they come up with a new word called provisional income. And your Social Security benefits are taxed based on your provisional income. And just to keep it simple, you can consider your provisional income to be your total income plus half of your Social Security benefits. If that number for a married couple is $44,000 or more, 85% of your benefit is taxable. Now, that doesn't mean it's taxed at 85%. A lot of people hear me say that and think that that's what that means. 85% of your benefit is added to your taxes. So let's say your Social Security benefit is $10,000 and you happen to have provisional income of $50,000. 8,500 of that is added to your taxes and taxed at your normal income rate. So for most people, your benefits are taxed at 85% of your benefit is taxed. If you happen to have provisional income lower than 44, less of your benefit is taxed. I'll give you a quick example just in case that was too complicated. Let's consider our great friends Joe and Jane Center. Jane has a pension of $20,000. Joe has a pension of $10,000. Jane has Social Security of 20. Joe has Social Security of 10. So their combined pensions are 30, and 50% of their combined Social Security is 15. Because remember, provisional income only cares about 50% of their Social Security. That means that their provisional income is 45. That puts them over the $44,000 limit. So 85% of their Social Security is added to their taxes. So bottom line, most likely when you begin to take Social Security, you're going to be taxed on it. So just be aware of that.
What about state of Michigan? That's a common question that I get from clients.
Yeah, state of Michigan taxes, you will not be taxed on. So This is strictly for federal. Great question, Nick. Thank you.
Just clarify. 85% of social security income
Mhm.
is subject to your
Correct.
effective tax rate.
Correct. It's added, in the same way you would add wages. Yeah. Great question. Subject to tax. Now, I mentioned earlier that if you are working and hope to collect Social Security, there could be some adverse side effects. So let's talk about that. Now, this can get really complicated, so I'm gonna try to make it as simple as possible. Let's pretend that you want to claim Social Security benefits and it's before reaching your full retirement age. Remember that age somewhere between 66 and 67 for you. If you are working and collecting wages, income, before your full retirement age, any dollar, every $2 that you earn over $22,320, your benefit, your Social Security benefit will be reduced by $1 for every $2 that you earn above that limit. Okay. Now the good news is any reductions in your benefit will actually be paid back to you once you reach full retirement age. So it's just another convoluted calculation. You'll get that money back. You got to pay it to them first if you happen to file while still working before full retirement age. Now, just to make it even more complicated, if you decide to file for benefits the year of your full retirement age, but you haven't quite reached full retirement age. So let's say if your full retirement age is 67 and you reach that in July, the income that you earn if you're still working from January to the end of June is considered in this calculation. If you earn over $59,520, you have to pay back $1 for every $3 that you earn above that. And again, it gets paid back to you once you actually hit full retirement age. Good news is after full retirement age, no matter how much you work, how much you earn, what you decide to do, there's no reduction in your benefits. So that's why I always say the full retirement age is a really key age to think about. That's where I would start the conversation about your benefits, because it really doesn't matter what you do from that point if you're still working. Full retirement age is sort of the key. So I'm going to talk about spousal benefits and survivor benefits. Those are the last two things I think are important to really understand. Spousal benefits are a big one that I think gets glossed over a lot. There's a lot of strategies involved that many people are probably not aware of. Now you'll notice I put spousal benefits and then a bullet point for married. That might sound redundant, but there are spousal benefits for divorced folks too. So I'll touch on that in a second. I didn't want you guys to think I was being redundant. So in order to receive spousal benefits, you have to have been married for at least 1 year. Apparently, the Social Security Administration thinks that means it's real love. All it takes is 1 year. If you get married and then want to file on each other's Social Security within 12 months, they say, "Nuh-uh, you got married just for Social Security. We don't want that." So, married at least 1 year. You can claim spousal benefits as early as age 62. So, just like claiming on yourself, as long as you're 62, you can start to claim benefits. Now, here's the key. You're eligible for up to half of your spouse's benefit. So this is where it gets fun. So let's paint the picture. Let's say my wife and I are the same age. We're both full retirement age. She had a great long career where she made good money. She worked her entire life, and she is now due $40,000 at full retirement age. That's her FRA benefit. Me, maybe I worked part-time. I took a couple of years off to raise the kids or what have you, or maybe I just didn't have a high income job. My benefit is only $10,000 at full retirement. Okay. If my wife files and I file at the same time in this scenario at our full retirement age, Social Security Administration will give my wife her 40. They'll give me my 10 and then another 10 on top, because they want to give me at least half of my wife's benefit, my spouse's benefit. There's a lot of caveats there, which I will get into, but that is spousal benefits in a nutshell. Okay, you're always due half of your spouse's benefit. You have to at least wait until your spouse files. So the higher earning spouse has to file first before you can get that extra benefit. Okay, and of course, like I said, you have to have been married for at least 1 year. Last bullet point there says no advantage in delaying spousal benefits past FRA. If you remember your own benefit, there's plenty of reasons to delay beyond your full retirement age. You can get that guaranteed 8% step up a year. If you're only ever going to file for the spousal benefit, if that's going to be the highest yours will ever get, you should always file at full retirement age. There's no spousal benefit increase after full retirement age. I mentioned divorced folks. A lot of it is the same as married folks as far as the benefits. There's just some caveats that apply. In order to file on an ex-spouse, your marriage must have lasted for at least 10 years. That makes a little more sense to me. You don't want to get married and divorced just for the just for the Social Security benefits. So if your marriage lasted at least 10 years, you want to file on an ex and you are not remarried. Okay, that's another key one. You have to be at least 62 and not remarried. If you're remarried, the only spousal benefit you need to worry about is your current spouse. This is a great strategy for confidentiality purposes. So if me and my wife got divorced in that scenario that I just talked about, even if she's remarried, as long as I'm not, I can still file and get half of her benefit. It doesn't affect her benefit. It doesn't affect her new spouse, and they don't even know that I've done it. So it's very confidential. And this might not apply to folks in the room, but maybe people that you care about, that might apply to them.
How many divorces can you have?
That's a great question. As a matter of fact, you can have multiple exes of 10 plus years and file on the higher one.
Oh, just a higher one. We only do
you
one
can,
though.
yeah, you can pick the higher one. So keep your ex's Social Security numbers and date of birth, and then that way we can maximize their Social Security. But at least 10 years of marriage. I don't know how many of those you can stack in your life, but
What would you want? What's that? What would you want to? Money's money.
So the one other major difference between divorce benefits and currently married benefits are, as an ex-spouse, you don't have to wait for your ex to file. Remember, if you're married, your spouse has to file first before you get those spousal benefits. If it's an ex-spouse, you don't have to wait for them to file. They just have to be old enough to file. So if your ex is at least 62 and you're old enough to file, you can file at that time. I want to chat just a little bit about widows and widowers because these are important too. As a surviving spouse, you can get full benefits at your full retirement age. So again, that full retirement age is really important if you want to get full benefits. One thing that's a little bit different about a survivor versus filing on your own is the fact that you can file as early as age 60. So there's a really cool strategy here that I've helped a client with in the past. I think Nick has too. Client was a surviving spouse. She was age 60. And she came to us looking for counsel. Long story short, we decided that it would make sense for her to collect a benefit on her deceased spouse starting at age 60. Now, she only got about 70% of the benefit because she's filing really early, right? So she got about 70% of the benefit. She was able to collect on her deceased spouse's benefit for 10 years, all the while letting her own grow. So she got to switch over to her own benefit at age 70. So there's a really cool Social Security maximization strategy in there that many people aren't aware of. You can file for a deceased spouse's benefit and still let your own grow. So you're deferring your own benefit, but you're still collecting income in the meantime. So you can do that as early as age 60. If you happen to be caring for a child under 16, you can get an additional benefit, but just at 75% of what the full retirement age benefit is. There's a few caveats here. The most important things to understand are the age and the filing status of your deceased spouse. So if they were younger than full retirement age and they had already filed, you as the surviving spouse can receive up to 100% of that spouse's benefit. If the deceased spouse was older than full retirement age, you as a surviving spouse can receive 100% of what they would have been eligible for at the time. So if me and my wife decided that she was going to grow her benefit to age 70, but she happened to pass away at 68 and hadn't filed yet, me as a surviving spouse, I am now eligible for her age 68 benefit because that's what she would have been eligible for at death. Much like filing on your own, if me as a surviving spouse wants to claim prior to my full retirement age, I'm going to receive somewhere between 71 and 99% of the benefit. If I file at age 62, I'll get about 70%. If I file one day before my full retirement age, I'll get 99 and change. So just like filing on your own, if you wait, or if you want to file before full retirement age, no matter what the case, you're going to get less than 100%. That's the bottom line. My last slide here, there are, as I mentioned in our conversation, there's benefits for surviving divorced spouses as well. It's just like spousal benefits. Again, married longer than 10 years, eligible for full benefits, as listed on the previous slide, you still have to be unmarried. So if you're ever going to claim on an ex, you have to be unmarried. Again, if you're remarried, the only spousal benefit you need to worry about is your current spouse. But again, if you have multiple exes of 10 plus years, you can pick the highest one and collect on that. I've never ran into that, Nick. I don't know if you have either.
Not yet.
But
Anything's
never say
possible.
never.
And he
Anything's
doesn't, that's the
possible.
funniest part. You know, you have no idea.
Somebody in the room might have been
No, I
thinking,
know,
he
my
was,
sister.
he was,
He was
the
bold enough
guy
to
to
ask the
speak up.
question.
Yeah, that was, we appreciate that. Children as well. So if a child is under 18 or they're 19 and a full-time student, they can be eligible for 75% of the benefit as well. So I recognize I threw a lot at you guys. There's a lot to learn about Social Security. There's many strategies I didn't have the time to touch on here either. But Social Security maximization is something that we're very passionate about here. So I hope you'll be able to pick up on a few things and hopefully lead to a greater conversation when it's the time to file for you guys. I've got Nick coming up here. He's going to talk more about IRMAA, IRMAA, very important acronym that you'll also have to learn. This is an area that touches on things like tax planning, investment planning, charitable planning, estate, any kind of planning you can think of really ties back to this IRMAA. It's an area that we partner with Cynthia and collaborate with her a lot on. She's been a valuable resource for our clients. So Nick, without further ado, I'll change the slide here for you. You're up.
Has anyone heard the term "stay in your own lane" before? I and our team likes to stay in our own lane when it comes to insurance planning. That's why we refer to Cynthia. I am never going to be or pretend to be the expert to say what policy should you choose, whether that's Medicare or before you turn 65. There's actually some interesting things that Cynthia helps clients with. What our team is very good at, though, is planning around Medicare when it comes to managing your premiums. And if you're not yet 65, which we're not even talking about today, how can we potentially reduce the premiums that you pay before you go on Medicare? So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Income-related monthly adjustment amount. At the end of the day, it's just another tax. What this means is that your income, the government says, is too high, and they're going to charge you more for your Medicare Part B and D premiums, okay? And similar to our tax code, there's different tiers, which we'll look at here in a few minutes. It really doesn't affect that many people, but because of the folks that we traditionally work with who have saved really well for retirement, have accumulated a nice nest egg, a lot of them actually do fall into this 5%. So it's a huge miss in our opinion if we're not at least taking some of this stuff into consideration. Because, like I said, who wants to pay more for insurance or look at it essentially as an additional tax? So when we think of income tax planning, which, as Josh mentioned, we do a lot of that for clients. We are not CPAs. We do not prepare taxes. We do not prepare legal documents. But we spend a lot of time talking about effective tax planning and estate planning for folks. Very, very important to your overall financial plan. So similar to tax code, to our tax brackets, I should say, are Medicare premiums. So as you can see, I know it's kind of a busy chart, but at different income levels, you're going to pay a different Medicare amount, Medicare Part B and D premium amount. So let's just take a look at a married couple. All right. If your income is $206,000 or less each and every year, you are not going to be subject to IRMAA. And only, I'd say, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that number was like 180,000. It has gone up significantly over the last couple of years, primarily because of this wonderful inflationary environment that we're living in. So when us numbers geeks, self-proclaimed numbers and tax geeks, when we think about inflation, we don't love the higher cost, but what we do like is that your income now has wider parameters to pay at lower amounts, okay? Because like I said, 3 or 4 years ago, these numbers were significantly lower than where they are today. One thing that I always like to point out, when it comes to income tax planning, we live in a tiered system. Okay, so if your income is $150,000, as an example, as a married couple, part of your income is taxed at 10%, part of it's taxed at 12%, and then part of it's taxed at 22%. So you kind of get this blended rate of probably around like 13 to 15%, I would say. Not the case when it comes to Medicare. It's a true cliff. So if you go over $206,000 by $1 only. You have $206,001. You are paying those higher Medicare premiums. So for a married couple, if you go over that level, it's an additional couple grand a year to this next tier. And as you can see, if you have significant income in this range, 386 to 750, you're looking at almost $10,000 more a year between married couples. Single filers cut that number right in half. Okay. And I show this because, and I'll talk a little bit about this here at the very end in just a few minutes, but at some point, I hate to say it, if you're married, you're going to file single at some point. So some folks always think that they're going to be in a certain Medicare tier or an income tax bracket, but unfortunately, when people pass away, your tax filing status certainly changes as well. So we always say, don't step off the cliff, I should say. And the last point I'll make here is that Medicare does not look at your income when you turn 65 to determine this. It's a 2-year look back. So when that income becomes very important is when you actually turn 63. Not a lot of people are aware of that. Okay. So when Medicare is determining your premiums for 2024, they're actually looking at your income level for 2022. Okay. So by the time Medicare is actually looking at your 2024 return, it's not going to be till 2026. And chances are these numbers are going to go up a little bit more. Make sense? So what actually determines income, or what I should, a better way to say that is, what is Medicare actually looking at? How do they define income? Okay. It's something called modified adjusted gross income. Okay. Very, very similar to adjusted gross income. I forget what line item it is on your actual tax return.
11 and 2A.
Oh my gosh, we need to see, this is why we partner with Cynthia. What a rock star. I should know that. Yeah, it escaped me. I love that you knew that off the top of your head. I love it. Adjusted gross income is a huge driver to determine many different things in your on your tax code. MAGI is a workaround in many cases for the government to say, well, your income was this, but you had this other stuff, so you might not get taxed more, but we're going to kind of stick it to you in other areas, okay? Whether that's related to how much you pay in Medicare premiums, or how much tax you pay on Social Security, or actually, some of the pre-65 health insurance planning that we do. What makes it even more complex is there's about 10 different ways or different forms of MAGI, how that can be calculated. But for the purposes of tonight's discussion, it really only means your AGI plus tax exempt interest, so municipal bonds, okay? Think of who normally has municipal bonds, but those are tax-free bonds. Generally, those don't make a lot of sense for people unless you're in a very high tax bracket, okay? So if you go back to that previous slide, who's paying more Medicare premium? Significantly more, those with higher income, right? So if you have a bunch of money coming in through tax-exempt bonds because you're in a high bracket, the IRS is adding back that interest that you received to determine what your Medicare premiums are going to be. So you might not be taxed on it, but going back to my previous statement, it's going to determine what your actual premiums are. And like I said, at the end of the day, this is just an additional tax on your overall income. Okay. So what goes into MAGI? Things like pension, the taxable component of Social Security income. All right. Retirement account distribution. So you're taking money out of an IRA, a 401k, that sort of thing. Now, a Roth IRA, if you're familiar with those actually do not count as taxable income on your tax return. If I'm a betting man, at some point, the IRS says, we're actually at some point, if you're taking money out of a Roth, that's going to be an add back item. I would not be shocked if that happens down the line. I hope I'm wrong on that. There's no required minimum distributions with Roth IRAs yet. But at the end of the day, it could be something on the horizon. I haven't heard anything like that, but like I said, if I'm a betting man, come back to me in 10 years, tell me if I'm right or wrong on that one. Dividends, interest, capital gains from after-tax investment accounts. So I'm not talking about things like IRAs, 401ks, things like that. These are your after-tax investment accounts that might be held jointly with your spouse, individually in a trust account, et cetera. If you have investments that are kicking off dividends, interest, you're selling positions in your portfolio for profit, all of that counts as income that's flowing through to your tax return. Okay, so that's what's going into the calculation. Where planners like myself and Josh come into play is, how can we manage these? Okay, what are some strategies that we can take a look at? And the way that my brain thinks of it is, if you're kind of two separate parts, right? So if you're already on Medicare, okay, chances are maybe you could have done some things up until this point to maybe reduce some income, but maybe you did, maybe you didn't. At the end of the day, we're in the situation now where we are on Medicare. What are some ways that we can reduce your overall taxable income? Okay, tax reduction strategies. On the flip side, for people who might be, let's say, age 60 to 63 or even 65, I mentioned 63 because that 2-year look back. What are some income acceleration strategies that we can look at where we're actually accelerating income, getting money out of your retirement account, moving it to a Roth, where in the future, it's going to help to reduce your future income, which could bring down those Medicare. So it's almost two components. I know it was a little bit wordy, but there's a lot of moving parts there. It's really two ways that you can look at it. How can I accelerate income right now, in the now, to reduce the future Medicare premiums? Or is there an opportunity, because I'm of age where I am on Medicare, that I can reduce income any way that I can? Okay, because I can't really do that forward planning anymore. So if you're in that stage where we just want to simply reduce income, charitable giving, it's a wonderful tool. The issue is, if you're deducting your charitable, or if you're giving money to charity and you're deducting that on your tax return, guess what? It does not affect your adjusted gross income. It is they call that a below the line deduction. Okay. So one wonderful tool to use, especially for clients who now have to take money out of their IRAs or their 401ks or 403bs, is something called a qualified charitable distribution. What makes that very special or powerful is that, let's say at 73, you have to take out 50 grand from your IRA. Okay. But you don't really need all 50,000. You only need 40. And coincidentally, you usually give 10 grand a year to your church. Okay. You can actually gift $10,000 directly from your IRA to that church. So instead of having 50,000 show up on your tax return, only 40 shows up. Okay. And that's what actually affects the MAGI calculation, that MAGI that I just went over. It's a wonderful strategy, and you got to be really careful with those, because you actually have to make the gift directly from the IRA to the charity. It can't come to your bank and then go out. It has to be a direct transfer. And unfortunately, you cannot use them in a 401k or a 403b. Don't ask me why. They have the same exact tax treatment, but the IRS loves to make this world a very complicated web. So that I almost feel like it's intentional sometimes that we step on a landmine. And, but at the end of the day, they have the same exact tax treatment. So I have a couple clients where, we've actually moved money out from a 401k or a 403b to an IRA to qualify them for this QCD opportunity. Okay. And to my point earlier, it's a true cliff. I have a few clients where we say, you know what, if you give, you're on the cusp, you're so close. If you literally give 2 grand to charity, you're going to just barely get underneath that amount compared to not doing it, and you pay 2 grand more in Medicare premium. So good news, you either get to give the 2 grand to a charity that you care about, or you get to give it to the government. So you guys could probably figure out what the client normally chooses. But
set up a charitable gift annuity, does that have the same treatment? Moving 10,000 over in your example?
It's a good question. It gets a little bit tricky because a charitable gift annuity you actually can now do from an IRA. In certain circumstances, that would fly because it will help to reduce your modified adjusted gross income. But if you're gifting securities from an after-tax brokerage account, unfortunately, it will not, because it's not a true reduction of MAGI. It's reducing your taxable income. So it's a different way that Medicare would look at it. It's a great question. Tax efficient investing. So I mentioned those after-tax investment accounts, now it's kind of shifting gears away from IRAs, 401ks, things of that nature. If you're really close to, you're a single filer, let's say, and you have a $40,000 a year Social Security benefit, you have a $20,000 a year pension benefit, and maybe, so now we're at 60, right? And now maybe we need to take an RMD, maybe that's 15 grand a year, that's 75. But then you also have this after-tax investment account that might be kicking off 10 or 15 grand a year in dividends, interest, things like that. It's a good problem to have, but you're getting really close to that 103. And then at the end of the year, you say, well, some of these stock positions in my portfolio have done really good. I'm going to place some trades, but I'm going to have to pay some capital gain tax on those. If you then place that trade and you generate 15 or 20 grand in capital gains, and really capital gains is just essentially the profit that you made on the stock or the bond sale, that gets added to your magi. Okay, so you are now over that amount. So that's something we take a really close look at for clients, especially for the ones that are really close to that threshold, because sometimes deferring a sale just a couple weeks or reducing it just slightly could be the difference of saving you guys a few $1,000 or more in Medicare. Retirement contributions, if you're still working, you could be contributing to a 401k or a 403b. That can help to bring down your overall taxable income. Now we've talked a lot about strategies to reduce the income, but what if let's say someone retires in their late 50s, okay? I love that situation. That's like that's where like the wheels start to turn for geeks like Josh and I. Like, what can we be doing from now until when Social Security starts, maybe in your mid 60s, or perhaps when your RMDs begin at age 73 now is the age. We call those the gap years, okay? Where you don't have this income being forced upon your tax return. What can we be doing now to be proactive with that and plan accordingly? This is where these two things come in. Withdrawal strategies, particularly Roth conversions. Roth conversions, we love those, especially in today's historically low tax environment. What this is saying is going back to my original example, let's pretend someone's 59 years old. They have $1 million in their 401k, all right? And because they have other assets, and maybe, let's say a $20,000 or $30,000 pension, they really don't have a ton of income that they have no flexibility on that's hitting the tax return. Well, we ultimately consider taking money out of that IRA or 401k, converting it to a Roth IRA. We take a close look at, okay, well, how much do we do to maximize a certain tax bracket, et cetera, right? And so by doing that, or when you do that, I should say, it's a taxable event. So if you do a $50,000 Roth IRA conversion, 50 grand ends up actually showing up on your tax return. But if you do that over the course of 7 years before Social Security hits, it's a lot of money that you just moved out, right? It's been a long day. 350,000, I think, is the math, how that shakes out. Even if you apply a decent rate of return, a reasonable rate of return, 5-7%, you're growing that Roth to 500 grand by the time you're in your mid 60s. And then if you apply a 7% rate of return and you use that, good old rule of 72 where your money doubles every 10 years, you're turning that $500,000 tax-free account into a multi-million-dollar asset for you that you can have in your back pocket later on in life, or to pass along to the next generation. So you might be asking, well, how does that actually apply to Medicare? Or how does that affect anything? Well, if you're reducing the amount of money that you have in that IRA over time, because you're converting funds to the Roth, you're effectively reducing your future required minimum distribution that you have to take out at 73, okay? And when you turn 73, you have to take out about 4% of your overall, it's right around that number, call it about 4% of your IRA, right? So if you're 60 now or close to it, you got $1 million in your 401k and you don't really touch it much because you have other assets that you can spend down, that's going to probably double in the course of 10 years if you apply around a 7% rate of return. Obviously, that's not guaranteed. Anything could change or anything could happen. But at the end of the day, when you turn 70 at that point, if you apply that 4% with RMD figure, that's $80,000 that now is hitting your tax return. So you guys following my math? I know I went kind of quick there. So 4% on that 2 million. And now, so in addition to that 80K that's hitting your tax return, you now have your Social Security that's also hitting your tax return, right? So if we can be very proactive during those gap years, it's not guaranteed that we reduce your Medicare premiums, but there's a good shot that we will. And if we don't, guess what? It's, in my opinion, it's Heads you win, tails you break even. And the break even is, well, now you got to shift a bunch of money over to a tax-free account, and having tax diversification in your portfolio is so critical in retirement. So if you end up having a high or really large expense later on in life, and you don't have a Roth IRA, guess what? A lot of that money you got to take out from that 401k or that IRA is going to hit the tax return. Okay. So you don't have a lot of flexibility because every dollar you take out of that account shows up on your tax return. So if you're able to build a Roth up over time, you can have that in your back pocket. I just had this conversation with a client about a week ago. They have an IRA, a Roth, and an after-tax account. They're buying a new house. They want to pay cash for it. We literally took a little bit out of each one to keep her in a very specific tax bracket and Medicare tier. So I know that's complicated, but hopefully it highlights, like I mentioned earlier with that DIY video, like that's tough stuff to do on your own. So whether it's with us or another professional, I encourage you to talk to somebody who knows this stuff because it can get complicated really quickly. As I wrap up here, historically low tax rates expiring soon. I know I probably went down a little bit of a rabbit trail related to taxes, but it's really important. You're going to hear a ton about this next year. Okay. Especially because our current tax code that was passed into law by President Trump in 2017 went into effect in 2018, actually are set to expire in 2026. Okay. So rates are going to go up more than likely, unless made permanent. Who knows how that can end up shaking out? But we've had this golden opportunity for for the past, it's hard to believe, what is that, 6 years almost, to be able to accelerate some income, do things like Roth IRA conversions, and pay a very low rate of tax. So make sure that you're taking a look at that because we got this year and next year to be proactive. And in addition to these rates going down, the income parameters for each bracket are significantly wider, where you're actually paying a lot less of your income at 22 or 24% compared to where they were a few years ago.
The new rate is the current rate, right?
Correct. You got it. Yep. And if not made permanent, what you see over here is going to go back into law in 2026. Yep. So if you're in the 22% bracket on the upper end of it, you're now at the 28% bracket. So that's why I've been saying to folks, heads you win, tails you break even. Even if rates remain the same, I don't think they will. I think they will go up. I'm a betting man. But if they don't, what harm did you do to your situation? So these don't make sense for everyone. It has everything to do with your current and your projected tax bracket, but it's certainly something worth looking into. What are my options if my income is too high? Okay. I like that. Yeah. You're screwed. I like it. No, that's my favorite comment of the evening. You're actually not totally. There is an opportunity where you can actually file an appeal. All right. But there has to be a life-changing event. It can't just be, oh, we converted too much money to the Roth IRA. We blew up your income because we didn't plan accordingly. Can we not pay as much in Medicare, or we realize a really big capital gain? That's not going to fly. Okay. It has to be for one of these reasons that you're seeing on the screen. So for many folks who might be working, until age 65, guess what Medicare is, and they retire, guess what Medicare is looking at? They're looking at their tax return from 2 years prior when they were still working. Well, if a client's just about to retire at 65, you can make an honest case and say, look, guys and gals, like my income is not going to be the same this year now that I'm retiring compared to what it was 2 years ago when my income was ultimately analyzed. So that's when you file this appeal. And I mean, I think you help clients with this, right? Okay. Do you have any comments on this? I know I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean,
it's a very important tool.
Yeah.
Because most of my clients that are, like you said, you're retired at 65 or maybe 67, their income that year is going to be significantly reduced. And so they have the opportunity to file, I call it an SSA 44. I'm not seeing the 561.
We may have, that might be the reconsideration form. I'll have to double check on that.
This is actually not an appeal. The SSA 44 is simply to wave your hand and say, hey, I've had a life-changing event since 2 years ago. one of these, work stoppage, work reduction even, I'm not gonna make that much this year. They allow you to estimate your income for the present year. And then they will reduce your Part B premium to the appropriate bracket based on what you estimated your income will be that year. If you don't do that, 2 years down the road, they'll finally see that you started making less, but they don't give you money back. They adjust it for the next year going forward. So it's a really important tool to use. Otherwise, you could just be paying these extra premiums that you wouldn't have to. So you're leaving money on the table. Every fall, they keep looking 2 years back. So it's not, I've had clients ask me, well, is it always going to be based on that income 2 years ago? But every fall, they keep looking 2 years back to establish your premiums for the next year. And I just want to mention, once in a while, we've had a client that, has filed that. And by the way, Social Security is very good about processing those. It may take them 6 weeks, but once they do, well, that's been our experience. Once they process them, they will retroactively refund you back to your Part B start date. So they do give that money back. It just takes them a little time to do it. But let's say you anticipated you were going to be in this whatever lower bracket, and then you went over it. You took a large capital gain or whatever. They will catch it 2 years down the road, and they will charge you back the difference. There is no penalty or interest, but there will be a day of reckoning.
Yeah.
So
That's a great add-on. It's so we have systems and processes in place to remind clients of this, because like you just mentioned, Cynthia, I mean, it's real money at stake that we're talking
well,
about.
one more thing.
Please, yeah.
That person that's filing that because they retired, they usually have to file it 2 years in a row. Because, if you're filing this, retiring in 2024, likely your 2023 income is also higher, like your 2022. And they don't just extend that reduction forward. You have to file the form a second time. Yes, yeah. Okay, sorry.
No, that's great commentary. I will end with something, what I like to call a tax trap. That's really what this is. Something called a widow's penalty. And I alluded to it earlier, where at some point, unfortunately, all married couples are going to file single at some point. Okay. So at times I will advise clients, hey, we should be doing some things like Roth IRA conversions. Why would we do that, Nick? I mean, our income is our income. I mean, we're never, unless taxes dramatically change, is it really worth it? It's always going to be that way. Say, well, we have to be thinking about this. Once again, heads you win, tails you break even, potentially. So it's very common, where you have, let's take a look at a married couple who's each 80 years old. Okay. Now, if you have strong Social Security, a nice portfolio with high RMDs in a couple pension or in a pension amount, you could run into this, and it could create some big time issues, both from a Medicare and an income tax planning standpoint. Because usually when one spouse passes away, if they had a pension, there's typically a continuation of benefits, maybe not the full amount, but anywhere between 50 and 75% is very common. Okay. The only income source that goes away is the lower of the two Social Security benefits. Okay. So if husband and wife were both collecting, and let's say husband was the one who passed away, he was getting 40 grand a year, wife was getting the spousal benefit of 20. Okay. His goes, obviously he passed away, his goes away, wife's benefit of 20 drops off. She steps up to the 40. Okay. So there is truly a $20,000 a year reduction in income. But in my experience, that's usually not enough of an income reduction to not have this come into play. Okay. So not only could this potentially impact your Medicare premiums down the line, similar to how I outlined, how the 103 is half of the 106, it's kind of how that works from our tax code too. So as an example, all the way up to the top end of the 12% marginal tax bracket, it's about 90 grand of taxable income. It's about 45 grand for single. Okay. So in that other example, if income only goes down by 20,000, that spouse who maybe had 90 grand of income or that married couple had 90 grand of income might now only have 70 with her filing single. So not running into a Medicare issue, but certainly their tax bill is going to go up, which is a sting. Obviously, when you lose a spouse, you're not expecting that. So some of the strategies I mentioned earlier are certainly ways to potentially cut down on that. So we covered a lot tonight. So a little bit like drinking from a fire hose, but I know from chatting with you, Cynthia, many of your clients have questions on Social Security. I know you talk about IRMAA quite a bit with your clients. It's a complicated web, so that's why we wanted to go over this particular topic. Thank you all for coming tonight. Really do appreciate it.